And welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome back to the Toffee Blues podcast. We've had a few weeks off, but I for one am crashing off the walls a bit, like without the football. So with it feels about right, I think, to start talking about it again and try and get get these withdrawal symptoms gone. So yeah, I'm joined by my usual co-host Harry once again. How you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. Very much the same as you. I'm watching any type of football that I can get my eyes on at the moment, to my detriment, because I think we could all do with a break. But we knew it was going to be a busy summer, and I've got to say we're going to get into it. But I thought we'd be a lot further along, personally. That I thought we'd have a lot more to talk about on this pod today. But
Yeah.
we'll get into it.
I was gonna say, yeah, definitely save that for later. But yeah, we are also joined by Ben. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. I mean, like similar to you, I'm missing the season a bit, to be honest. It's a bit boring, but at least with like players starting to come in, like Barry, it's starting to get a bit more exciting and looking forward to next season a bit more now.
Yeah, like I say, I think our pre-season officially has started this week. You know, the players are back in training and friendlies are just around the corner. So we're nearly there. We're nearly past this hump. But yeah, like I say, I was kind of just going to go into that straight away. What you were saying there, Terry, about there is quite a bit of football this summer that's been going on, but I don't know. I've kind of struggled to get into it a little bit. I think I'm missing Everton a bit, and we kind of spoke about it a bit towards the end of the season about how we're kind of in a rare position over the last few years where I think we kind of wanted the season to kind of carry on the momentum we were on a bit. Usually we're so bad that we're looking forward to a few weeks off from all the stress and that. But I think that this summer I can't remember a time where I've been more excited for Everton to come back really. Through a whole combination of things. I imagine you're in a similar boat.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we said on the pod, didn't we? I mean, what was it? Three wins we ended the season on, and could have been four if we hadn't have blown it at home to Ipswich. And I think it's a really nice state of play that we were in. And like you touched on there, the last couple of seasons, it's been like last day, last minute survival or survival with a game or two to go, and we're just so mentally exhausted. I think the mentality, obviously, since David Moyes came back in January, was so different. And you're absolutely right. I don't think many of us did want it to end. Obviously, with it being the last season at Goodison, with there being question marks around the how ready the new stadium was, with how many players were leaving, how many players we had to bring in, on the football and kind of on how we've been filling the void. I've got to make a confession, fellas. I've fallen head over heels in love with James McAtee watching the under 21s. And I'm worried because I don't think we're going to sign him, and I think I just watched that whole tournament thinking how much of a difference he would make to an Everton side. But yeah, it was a good end to the season. I think we're sort of allowing ourselves to hope and dream a little bit, which we haven't probably in the last 3 or 4 years. So it's a nice place to be, regardless of how boring this time of the year is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think James McAtee for me screams Nottingham Forest. I think with Gibbs White having just gone to Tottenham, I think as we're recording this, he's literally just about doing his medical, so it's kind of come out of nowhere a little bit. But Nottingham Forest need attacking options. He does seem very Forest to me. I think I'm with you. I have the feeling we're probably going to miss out on him. But yeah, you're definitely right. Moyes has definitely changed the whole vibe. I think if we were going into the season under Deitch again, we'd all kind of have a ceiling on our expectations. But I think Moyes is more than actively encouraged us to think, the sky's the limit. Let's aim higher. You look at his first full season at West Ham, and they'd gone from kind of fighting relegation a little bit to breaking into the European places. So I'm not exactly expecting that, but if a few teams have an off season next year, who knows? How are you feeling ahead of it, Ben? Are you feeling good about this season coming up?
Yeah, it's probably the best I felt like upcoming for a few seasons now. I mean, like with Dice, you kind of know what you're getting, but I feel like this season we don't know how high the club can go up the table. It'd be a dream at this point, but Europe's maybe possible if a few teams struggle. Like Forest could struggle in the league. Maybe Palace could lose players. Brentford are definitely going to lose players. So I think they'll go towards the table. It looks like West Ham struggling as well. So it's nice to have a season where we're not just going to be like, oh, we're staying up the season. It could be anywhere really. I think from up the table.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think even the most pessimistic of Evertonians can't really be thinking about relegation this season, surely. I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah, it's definitely, as you say, there's definitely a few teams that finished above us last season are in and around us, who, as you say, are looking in a much weaker position than us a bit. But as Harry said at the start, we've still got a lot of transfer business to do, and that we've really kind of got to get right. And as I said, we'll get into that towards the end of the podcast. But just looking ahead to the future, obviously we've got as I say, friendly start next week. We've got Accrington on Tuesday, and then Blackburn next Saturday. Then we've got a few games in America as well for that PL series tournament. It's all coming thick and fast for some of these teams. I know, obviously with the Club World Cup and all of that, some teams have been playing all summer. It's ridiculous, and there's been an awful lot of football that America have been treated to in particular over this summer. But yeah, as I said, the matches are going to be coming thick and fast for us in pre-season. We've also got the Roma friendly to round us off. The first gonna have a full house at Bramley Moore. The fixtures already sold out about a month before August. That's absolutely ridiculous. The friendly selling out full stop. Never mind this early. And obviously, I think they've pulled a masterstroke with the Legends match.
Yeah.
They announced the tickets were £25 initially, and everyone was a bit like, well, hang on, I know it's Bramley Moore, but come on. And then once they announced the Legends match, I thought we're getting two games for one for 25 quid. I mean, the fact it's sold out, I think, says it all. I think the club have really pulled off a masterstroke. But yeah, speaking of that game, I thought it'd be quite interesting. Maybe don't know how good you boys are on your Roma legends, but if you had any ideas about the sort of players you'd be looking for, maybe on the Everton side. Obviously, it's been confirmed Peter Reid's going to be managing us, and Jagielka's going to be definitely playing. I don't know if it's confirmed if he's going to be captaining us or not, but I'd imagine so with it being Jagielka. But are there any players you're really looking forward to seeing and that you're hoping might be involved? We'll go to you first, Harry.
I mean, Yakubu has to be. I know he posted it on his Instagram and everyone then started talking. For me, I'd love to see the Yak play. I would love to see, I don't know if he could, but Tim Cahill as well would be fantastic. I mean, I would be going for, relatively recent. I mean, Baines, obviously, there was this whole talk, wasn't there? He was meant to be the very first manager at Bramley Moore because at the time that the fixtures for the test event were confirmed, he was still the under 18s manager. So to see him play, yeah, I mean, you could really do some fantasy football here, couldn't you? But for me, it would be kind of that. Ironically, that first Moyes generation of players, your Baineses, your Jagielkas, I'd like to see Distan. I'd like. I know that he splits opinion, and I've never really understood why, but I would love to see like Tim Howard and Landon Donovan come over for it, given that their podcast is effectively just the USA and Everton that gets talked about on there. So seeing those two come over would be great as well. But you could really pick some weird and wonderful names out there, couldn't you? I mean, I dare say that legends will be quite a loose term, as we saw at that final game at Goodison. You get sort of like the giants of the 80s, and then you get like Jermaine Beckford walking out as well. So I dare say Roman might have more to pick from in terms of available legends. But yeah, it's a really fun idea and class. And what a statement of intent, by the way, from the fan base to just show, selling out that first friendly, the first time that you've had that general sale aspect for Bramley Moore as well. I just think it bodes really well. We've talked, haven't we, that they can increase the capacity of the stadium. And I think that that's probably an early sign to the Friedkins that actually, if it gets right on the pitch this season, that there's no harm in doing that going into next year.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, with Donovan and Howard, I think there's definitely an opportunity to kind of build this momentum we seem to be already building in the American market. Obviously, this will be very important for the Friedkins in particular, of course, being from there. And as I said about before, with the friendly tournament as well, having the players like Donovan and Howard, probably two of the greatest American footballers of all time, really, or soccer players, I dare say. But yeah, what about you, Bennett? Is there anyone you're really hoping to see that we haven't mentioned there?
I mean, like Harry mentioned, we could see like the Baines, the Howards, but it's hard to say really because I feel like there's not been that many legends recently. So the only like older players that I can think of is like Ferguson, but he's probably obviously too old to play. But if he was like maybe had a coaching role in the game, I don't know, that'd be like amazing, like almost like a player manager for the game. I don't know, that'd be quite cool.
Yeah,
Do
as I
we
said,
reckon Rooney will play? Like just jumping in there, do we reckon Wayne Rooney will make an appearance?
there's not an outside question. He's not he's landed the match of the day gig, hasn't he? So he's not going to be managing this season. So he's not going to have like a busy pre-season. I guess there's a chance. The thing that worries me is that I feel like if we're going with the knowledge that all the players have already been confirmed, you'd surely lead with your biggest one. And no disrespect to Jagielka, I love Jagielka, but if he's really our headline name, that's a tiny bit underwhelming. It's also a bit underwhelming on the Roma side as well because everyone's like praying for Totti, but surely if Totti's confirmed by now, you lead with that. So I don't know if maybe we're saving the best for last with the reveals or what, but yeah, let's be honest, it's probably going to be Umar Nias leading the line, but that's more than fine by me, honestly. Uh, yeah, I guess moving on from the past and I guess looking now to the present with obviously we were stressing a lot about this contract situation, weren't we, Harry? We were really unsure which players were going to get over the line, and I think I think from what we were saying, we probably expected a few more out of the crop that were expiring in the summer to have stayed on this summer.
Yeah.
I think we were both in the Decore in camp, and I'm not entirely sure if that was something we were pursuing or any of you just said no. But obviously, Decore is not going to be here next season. I think that's probably the main loss we're going to have next year. Calvert-Lewin as well, of course. That was a saga that rolled on for a while, and thank God that's finally come to an end, whether you're happy with the outcome or not. But obviously, it was massively important keeping hold of Idrissa Gueye. That was everyone's number one priority. Obviously, Seamus Coleman's got one more year left in him, thank God. Hopefully, if he's fit, he can lead out the team for the first time in a league match at Bramley Moore. That'd be another lovely gesture after being the last one in the Southampton game as well at Goodison. Michael Keane has stayed on for another year as well. That's definitely will have split opinion, but and yet, as I said, the incoming side of things hasn't quite maybe been as free flowing as some people would have hoped yet. But I'm more encouraged by the names we're looking at the moment, and I'd rather us be more like meticulous and cautious if it means we're going to bring in the right names, as boring an answer as that is. But yeah, how are we feeling so far on the business we've done? I know you had a bit to say about it at the start, Harry. So off you go.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it to a mild rant because it is pre-season after all. I just wonder, there was this narrative, wasn't there, with David Moyes that he used to get called like Dither and Dave, and that he used to sort of take a long time with transfers, and he really likes to weigh up. I mean, we're led to believe that with the Tierno Barry deal that he was meeting with him in Miami. He's had like various phone calls. That was sort of his approach. He's made that very public over the last couple of years that that's how he approaches bringing players in. And I do totally get, right, there is such a balance to be struck this summer with it needed a mass overhaul. We need bodies in the door, but equally we've had this before where we've had like money at the start of the Mashiri reign and we just bought loads of players in. It was very like he's available, get him in, no kind of vetting, no understanding of where he fits into a system. So I think fans have to kind of temper their expectations in terms of do we just want bodies through or do we want to kind of hold off, maybe miss out on one or two and go and get the right fit that builds a squad. I that was my mentality at the end of the season. I think now with preseason starting on Tuesday, I'm a little bit more concerned because we're talking about where can Everton place in the league next season. The reality of that is this current squad, for me, will still be a bottom half squad, and that is not to do with the quality that exists in that team. It's to do with just the lack of options. Like, and okay, we're not playing European football, but even a Saturday to Saturday, there is not a lot there if you look at the depth of that squad. And I was a little bit surprised that he wasn't sort of, and we don't know really what's going on behind the scenes, but we're being linked with players where we're going to pay money for them. I was really expecting us to have a handful of free agents in the door at this point by now. Your kind of Kufals, your Fabianskis, the backup goalkeeper situation worries me. Although it looks like we're linked with the lad at Brentford, which is surprising. Oh, sorry, Bournemouth, which is surprising. But yeah, for me, I just think it's quite slow. And I'm worried now because we've obviously got these thick and fast pre-season games that the squad have got to prepare for. We've got to really hope and pray, by the way, that we don't pick up any big injuries in pre-season. And I think he's going to have to get that so right in terms of what teams play in that PL series in America. We've just seen with the Club World Cup, right? Musiala is now out for 4 months for Bayern. Vert's gone to Liverpool and they've let Thomas Muller go, and Bayern are suddenly in a really interesting situation with that role role, and we just don't have that depth full stop anyway, nor the option to go out and sign instant replacements. So yeah, I know I said I'd keep it to a mild rant, but I'm a little bit terrified if I'm being honest with you lads. Like I think we've got to have a couple of really busy weeks now. Otherwise, I think we might be repeating ourselves next season.
Mm. Yeah, there's an awful lot to consider, and I have the feeling the boring answer would be if you asked the club why we haven't brought more players for the door is probably to do with PSR and the fact that the financial year ends at June and it's the first weekend and suddenly Barry's through the door. So I'd imagine that it will start to speed up a bit now. Obviously, it kind of asked it, like pre-season starting next week. You want to get the players through the door as quickly as possible to get them gelled in. And I get it's dispiriting looking at the likes of Liverpool who've spent all this money on all these top players while we're just sitting on our hands, or we've got Alcaraz on a permanent, and that's meant to do us for June. So yeah, it's not the most exciting, but as you say, I'm still scarred by that horrible summer of 2017 where we bought all those players, as you say, just signing players without a thought, all in like seven players in the same position, and still no right back or whatever, and the right back option still hasn't been filled even now. And like I say, I still think that's something that needs to be looked at this summer. And the fact the right back options that we're getting linked with don't seem that great either is a tiny bit of a concern because I do that does seem to be a priority for me, and it doesn't appear to be for the club as well. So okay, we wait to see how that one pans out. But what about you, Ben? Is there anyone that you're like particularly keen on that we're being linked with? What sort of positions would you be prioritizing if you were in charge?
Definitely think probably need like right back, left back, probably. Don't think we need any more strikers now. I mean, it depends if Chimiti goes on loan, because then we're only left with two. So
Mm,
it really depends on who goes on loan. I think it'd be good to kind of get the loan players out of the way, so then we know exactly where we need to get players in. But I think, like with what you and Harry were saying, like I think we shouldn't just get players in just for the sake of it. Like we need to get the right players, the ones that can take us higher up the league. Because I feel like the clubs, oh no, it's hard to say like a specific club, but when clubs just get players in just for the sake of it, they're often not as good. They just rush to like get rid of the fans disappointing. So I think we just need to get the right players. I say out the players we've been linked so far, and I think Kubo is quite a good link, but it depends if we can pull off a player because I think Sociedad have been in Europe quite a bit, so we might want to go European football. So somewhere like if Palace are in Europe, I mean we still don't know, but maybe a club like Forest might look at him maybe, and like Harry said, McAtee might go to them as well. So it'd be a shame to lose both of them.
mm,
I think
yeah.
definitely McAtee would be a good player to get.
Mm. Yeah, like you say, Harry, you mentioned about the free transfer market, but obviously the loan market is also something that we could definitely be looking at. It was something that I think Moyes had a lot of time for during his first spell, and we've got a lot of very good loans in during that time. Um, and I'd imagine McAtee would probably be a loan if we were getting him in. I think, as you say, I don't know if we have the money to be buying all these talented youngsters, but yeah, I'm definitely with Ben. I think Kubo would be superb, and I'm really excited by the links to him. And I'd hope there's a lot more legs to them than just being media speculation. But there was actually a Paul Joyce tweet earlier this week that obviously Paul Joyce isn't the be all and end all, but does seem pretty reliable when it comes to Everton news, and he suggested five names. One of them being that Wesley, which is to do with the loaning him straight out to Roma deal, young right back, he probably wouldn't be ready to start for us anyway. So if you kind of put that one aside, even though that does seem quite promising in terms of the Roma thing, you've got Kubo, Paulinho, Douglas Luiz, and John McGinn. I think all of them are exactly the sort of players we'd be looking at. I think
Yeah.
that's a really high caliber of target. I think I saw a couple of people made turning their nose up at John McGinn, but that's Aston Villa's captain for God's sake. I think um, and he's a horrible little narc, don't get me wrong, but that's the sort of player you want on your team rather than to be playing against him. That's exactly the sort of profile we should be looking at. I think he's a really, really talented player and would really add that bite to our midfield, which again is another position that really I think needs strengthening. You need someone sitting next to Gay. And again, someone like Paulinho or Douglas Luiz would also be superb for that role, just kind of sitting, letting Gay do his thing, roaming about the pitch, winning the ball high up. And as I said, we spoke about Decore earlier, and again, it was something that we really stressed towards the end of the season when it was up in the air whether or not he'd be staying. That energy of Decore is really difficult to replace, and I genuinely think
Yeah.
there's not a lot of players out there who can match that energy that we could realistically get. But Idrissa Gueye, if you put him in a slightly different role, maybe further up the pitch a little bit with someone sitting behind him, meaning he doesn't have as much defensive responsibility, then Gabe pretty much could make up that energy, I think. So yeah, I think those are some good names out there. Paulinho in particular is that's kind of one I haven't really seen before in terms of being linked to Everton, but that's really got my mouth watering a little bit. I don't know about you guys with those names.
Yeah, Paulinho is an interesting one, right? Obviously, Bayern took him from Fulham, and I think there's a really interesting point here to be made about like the PSR and how you touched on it earlier with like maybe why the transfers are so slow right now. I think there's also this idea that players don't make decisions quickly when there might be multiple clubs in for them. You know, we saw this with the Tete thing, right? Like he was sort of weighing his options up, and I dare say there's a lot of players that are doing that. The interesting thing of Douglas Luiz being sold from Aston Villa, them buying Onana, and that was all kind of tied in with PSR, and then potentially Everton then buying Douglas Luiz in it like from Juventus. I find really fascinating. I just think this sort of like weird player trading, almost like NFL styled player trading that seems to be happening as a result of PSR is interesting. I think to go back to my previous point, if David Moyes really is super involved in all of these transfers, John McGinn and Palhinha are probably much higher up his list than Douglas Luiz in terms of personality off the pitch. Obviously, they sort of made headlines, Douglas Luiz, didn't they, for being the first boyfriend girlfriend transfer when Alicia Lehmann went to Juventus as well. So I dare say David Moyes might be a little bit more cautious with someone like him. John McGinn's an interesting one, right? I don't think Everton have got a right to turn their nose up at anybody right now. Our problem is very much going to be can the pull of the new stadium and the potential that that brings marry and compare to European football this season. You know, Ben, you made that point with Palace, right? They look like they will play in some form of European competition. So then Palace become slightly more desirable this season. Nottingham Forest becomes slightly more desirable this season. I think the only thing that we have an edge on now, if you look at like Man United, they're not playing European football next season and they're still attracting big players. And I think we're now weirdly in that same bracket with United in terms of what the offer is. So yeah, I like Paulinho, and I think that on a loan with a view to buy would potentially be a great deal, great bit of business. John McGinn also, but I don't know if that's the most critical position. I just think. The no backup goalkeeper scares me. The no right back scares me. To go controversial on the pod, I don't know if Coleman getting a 1 year deal was the best decision. Like out of all of those players that were out of contract, was he high up on my list? Obviously for nostalgia and leadership, yes. But I just think that we need a Premier League ready right back, and we need Jake O'Brien to be one of those central defender options. And the other thing here, Al, you mentioned about the obviously Doucouré's energy being hard to replace. We know that Moyes just made slight tweaks to the Dyche model when he came in January. It'll be really interesting to see what kind of Everton he wants to build now he's got that full pre-season under his belt and what that means for the types of players that we're bringing in as well.
Yeah, it's one of them where like the more we talk about it, the more I actually realize just how many positions we actually need. And people are throwing around these crazy numbers, but the more I think about it, it probably is towards, up towards 10 signings we probably need this summer. Um, but backup goalie wise, I think that seems a tiny bit easier to fill than maybe you're saying, but because obviously Pickford is so reliable, and God forbid unless he gets injured or has a crazy red card, which he hasn't done for Everton yet, but it has probably come quite close on a few occasions, and you could definitely very feasibly see happening. But apart from that, you can't. There's no real chance of him needing any real competition or even um, like or anything like that. So I think it's someone, there's names like Angus Gunn being thrown around. I'd be more than happy with that as a backup. I think this lad from Bournemouth is also a very good option, depending on how much money Bournemouth want for him. If it's on the cheap, I think that's more than a decent deal for us. And obviously, Moyes has always wanted three goalkeepers. I remember from his first time at Everton, and I think Harry Tyler is more than capable as like the up and coming one to make up that three. So yeah, that's probably just one position needed there. Left back is definitely something that needs to be looked at. Even whether you're Mikalenko's biggest fan or his most critical, and Everton definitely have the full range within their fan base when it comes to him. But the backup is definitely needed there now that Ashley Young's not going to be here next season. Centre back's pretty much set, but as you say, it's only if we get a top right back in and O'Brien's able to move over and be more comfortable cover for that position there. So there's definitely at least a decent centre back or a very good right back needed there for that to work. Definitely needs at least one central midfielder, probably two, depending on the futures of Harrison Armstrong and Iwabunam. I think in an ideal world, we probably want to be getting them both out on loan this summer, but would probably have to keep at least one, just for depth. So in that sense, you'd probably need at least one decent starter in there. Probably another attacking midfielder option needed as well. Another right winger option needed. I think strikers were pretty much set unless unless again you wanted to be loaning Shemiti out, and then another one's needed there for the depth wise, maybe another lone striker. Richarlison, dare I say, with Spurs being in all these attacking options, could it possibly be that Richarlison comes on loan for a year if Spurs are willing to do that? I don't want to get my hopes up on that one again, and I don't want to go down that route again. We've spoken about it way too much on this podcast, but yeah, that's a lot to do. And I know again, everyone's aware of just how big a task we've got this summer, but. Yeah, it's probably I don't know how many positions I've said there, but what, eight signings probably needed this summer. And so yeah, yeah. What are your thoughts, Ben? Do you think there were any other positions there that you think we should definitely be looking at?
Um, I'd say one position I think we've never replaced, like I think since Sigurdsson left, the kind of that cam role. I mean, we kind of had Decore, but he's kind of a bit hit and miss. So I'd love to see a cam come in, like over, as we've already mentioned, left back, right back. With the Richarlison links, I'll have to be honest, I'm not totally sold on the idea. Because we've just sold Calvert-Lewin, who's an injury-prone striker. So to replace him with another one for 40 mil would just seem a waste of our money. I mean, we don't know exactly how much money we have for this summer, but we know there's limited money. So I think it'd be wasted if we spent 40, 50, maybe even 60 mil on them. I think it's definitely with the PSR, like Harry said, make use of the low market, maybe use the free agents to back up goalie. But like you said with Travers, he's only, I think, 5 mil. So that's not too bad, really. I
Yeah.
think he's got a bit of Prem experience. And actually saw on a tweet say he was the keeper that we scored against to stay up when Decore scored that goal. So I'm sure maybe we'll be a bit put off by that, but hopefully not. But no,
Yeah,
I
that's
think the thing that worries me is there's so many positions to fill, and you've like seen with a lot of the other clubs you mentioned, with Liverpool, they've signed Verts, Kirkes. This I feel like Everton are a lot slower in the market than other clubs.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that's we like to find the right player or not, but it just seems like we're always like on the back end to other clubs. Like you've seen with Tottenham, they've just signed, I think, Kudus, Gibbs White, and all we've signed is Alcaraz, couple of contract renewals. So yeah, I'm a bit concerned. I thought there'd be a bit more players in the door, maybe the free agents and the loans, maybe. Not all of them, but I just thought there'd be maybe a couple more players in.
mm,
But yeah, I'm hoping now, next couple of weeks, maybe more players come in. But like with the five players that I've been linked with, that the Palhinha, Louise, Kubo, McGinn, I'm not too sure if we get all of them. I think maybe we get a couple of them. But I
Oh
think
yeah.
because like if we had the midfield of like Tim, McGinn, Palhinha, I think they're all good players, but there's too many,
mm.
I'd say, in that midfield slot for it to work maybe. Because some of them two good players, like I'd say, too good for the bench, so it's hard to offer them more game time. But it'll be interesting to see, I think.
Yeah, that's it. We've spoken about the cautionary tale of 2017 where we signed all those players in the same position. So we definitely don't want a repeat of that. But, I think, just to play devil's advocate with the whole idea of us moving slowly. And, I'm speaking very much, it's going to sound so wanky, but I'm speaking very much from my perspective of when I used to play Football Manager. And I very much had the philosophy of like, just feel out, get your options ready, but like you never know who's going to become available towards like the August time and stuff. And I know you've kind of got the argument weighing up of like you wanting to get players through the door as quickly as possible to get them gelled in, ideally a full pre-season behind them so they're used to their teammates and stuff. But as I say, some options become available, and some if a team are wanting to get rid of a player, that and like the longer the window goes on and they haven't got rid of them, the more that asking price is going to decrease. So if we're interested
True.
in a player now and a club are asking for however much, and then they get more and more desperate for that money as the thing goes on, they're going to ask for less. So I do think that'll be Moyes' philosophy, as you say, dithering Dave, as you say, and he did used to do a lot of his business late when he was Everton manager first time around, a lot of the time. So I'm definitely nowhere near like the panic stage at this point. The preseason hasn't really got underway yet. So as long as you get the right players through by the end of August, then yeah, like I say, we can all sit here and complain then. But at the moment,
Oh,
I
we
think I
will.
think we're all good. Yeah, yes, we definitely will. I'm
We
sure.
will,
Yeah, yeah.
one way or the other.
Yeah.
My question to you, just quickly, both, is that we know that the Friedkins wanted this statement signing, right? They, in this very typical American fashion, call it like the franchise player, and obviously that initially looked like it might be a Liam Delap, and it wasn't. And we've got Barry in the door now, but without putting any disrespect on this young lad's name, that for me isn't a franchise signing. It's not a statement signing. So I guess given who we've been linked with, is there anyone that we've been linked with right now where you'd go, yeah, okay, that's the franchise signing, or do we think that's still yet to materialize?
I guess it's quite hard to define, isn't it? Because for some, it's interesting. Someone for me, someone like Kubo would really get me up, like out of my seat and be like, right, okay, this is exciting. This is exactly the thing. But that's not exactly, as you say, a high profile big name. I think Barry's in a similar bracket. I think that is exactly the sort of player we should be signing, but not the sort of player that a neutral or, as you say, some American fans suddenly goes, oh, hello, I'll have a that's interesting. Like I'll have a closer look into Everton now because they've signed that guy. But I think I should say I keep going back to this window, and like I say, it is a very similar parallels to when Mashiri first came in. But there were so many of them during 2017, and look how that turned out. You have Rooney, Sigurdsson would probably be considered one as well, especially with the money we spent. Even like Davy Klaassen was a very glamorous sign, and as I've just named three attacking midfielders there, you know what I mean? And that's that whole thing we keep going over that we signed so many players in the same position. Um, and yeah, like I said, I'm really not that arsed about that side of thing. I know some fans might disagree with me on that, and you want a statement signing and stuff, but that for me, a Kubo is a statement signing, as I say, and but it also fits into the sort of philosophy we should have. Paulinho would be a statement signing for me as well, even if it's not the most glamorous name. I remember when Paulinho was at Fulham. There used to be loads of graphics going around about how good Idrissa Gueye was doing for us in defensive numbers, and he'd always be second to Paulinho. So if we had both of them, no one's getting through our midfield, surely. Like, I mean, like it's to be like the most like prolific midfield of all time. Like, no one would ever get through. Brantford and Tarkowski would have nothing to do all season. It'd be great. So that would be brilliant for me. But yeah, it's definitely a bit of a pipe dream. Do you disagree with me, Ben? Is there anyone like really at like left field that you reckon we could maybe be going for? Grealish could be an example. We were looking at him maybe at the start of the window. He still hasn't gone anywhere yet. What about Jackie Grealish?
Yeah, I wasn't too sure on the Jack Grealish link, to
Yeah.
be honest. I don't know. It just doesn't really convince me. I mean, I feel like on the wing we've been crying out for pace for years, and Grealish isn't that for me. Same with like I know the Walker links, but I feel like a lot of people are just getting excited because it's just getting a player from a big club, getting the big names, but it doesn't really work. I don't think for a club like Everton.
Mm,
But I think definitely Palhinha would be a good signing. I was a bit gutted when he went to Bayern, to be honest, because I was hoping we'd get him. I know we weren't linked, but I was hoping maybe
mm.
something would crop up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say Barry's not the statement signing I was hoping for. I mean, it's he's unproven, but I think 27 mil for an under 21 French striker is a lot. It feels a bit more like a more expensive Schmidt signing a bit. Like when Schmidt came in, I think there was a bit more buzz actually when Schmidt came in than Barry, which is a bit interesting. Maybe that's because he's part of the Portuguese like academy. And you've seen the players that have come through like Portugal, like the Fernandes, Palhinha. Obviously, I'm not comparing them to Ronaldo, but you've got the famous Portuguese players. But yeah, I'm not too sure on Barry. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. iffy how he plays. I mean, he got 11 goals in Serie A, and I saw, not Serie A, sorry, La Liga with Villarreal, and I saw one of the stats is like his aerial duel rate was the highest in the Liga, so that could be a good Calvert-Lewin replacement. Because I feel like whenever I watch Calvert-Lewin, he always seemed to win every header, so it'd be good to have, if Barry is seen as like the Calvert-Lewin replacement, it'd be good to have someone who's good with the aerial set pieces. And then you've got the O'Briens as well, which would help with the set pieces as well. But yeah, it'll just be interesting to see who that statement signing is. I think Kubo would be an amazing signing. I think as soon as I saw him, I was like, yes, we need to go for him. And like Harry was saying, like the problem is if he is divering Dave, another club might come in, offer a bit more money, and then he goes in for them. Because like you mentioned before, Alex, not only have you got the big six to worry about, I find it quite astonishing how United's still a big pull considering all the issues you've got there, you know. It's quite funny, like a club like Everton are arguably closer to Europe than them. So you've got the big six to worry about, but then you've got Forest, Brighton, Newcastle, Palace. You know, even a club like Fulham have been, I think, were they in the Conference League until they were like really close to it? So it'd be interesting to see if other clubs come in. And like you mentioned before about how we've left it late before. I remember, I think it was deadline day, January 23, and I think we tried to sign 14 players and didn't get any of them. And I remember at midnight, it was like Andre Ayew might be coming and he chose to go to Forest instead. So that's the problem when you leave it late is you might not get anyone. But I think at the same time we need to let time drag on a bit more, maybe not till deadline day. But yeah, I'm kind of a bit into like I'm not too panicked, but I thought there'd be a couple more players. But at the same time, I think we should not leave it late, but also not drag it out, but not rush it, if you get me. Just like I said, for the sake of getting players in.
Yeah, I agree. That I said, I think we're all hoping that things speed up again, like in the next few weeks, and a few more names come through the door because it's exciting, and you know, there's a lot to do this summer, a lot we have to get right, but you know, it's always interesting when you have a bit of a squad rebuild, and the squad is almost certainly going to look very different next season, and hopefully it's filled with the right sort of players, who can help us push on. But yeah, I think we'll leave it there then. So thank you very much for joining me, Ben. Really good to get your insights on the channel. So thank you very much for that, mate.
Thanks.
And thank you very much as well for joining me, Howard. I'm sure not entirely sure how much the podcasts are going to be going on for the next few weeks, but you know, going into next season, we'll hopefully be able to get them all in a similar rate that we did last season. So yeah, thank you much for joining me, Harry, and thank you very
No
much
worries,
for
mate.
watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed. Comment below, give me your thoughts on all the players we suggested, and if you're looking forward to the season starting as a whole. Subscribe to Toffee channel for more Everton content, and we will see you in the next video. Up the Toffees.